Alright, this is the fourth, so this is really a transition now to how we're going to deal with getting things from one program to the other. And that other program can be many, many different programs. I'm going to point out I'm actually not showing you just how to get stuff like this to SketchUp. I'm trying to get it to Sketchy Physics, which is much more fun. But what we've got here, if you remember, and I'm going to go ahead now and show you this kind of sense of how you can go ahead and use layering. We can go back to our plot view here, and it takes us back even though the box isn't there. But of course, if we want to look at our layer manager, I'll push this out now just to show you. One of the great things about the layer states here is that they're all saved right there. So we can go to all state on, or I can go to plot view state, and I can go here. So that's one of the other places that will actually all states. So we can kind of have a set of settings of layers that are on and off that we remember. It's kind of huge, to tell you the truth. In all reality here, if you remember, we go over here. Right, that is all set. There's a way to make sure that even these boxes, these view boxes, remember what's on and off. But I would rather have you kind of do that in a two-step process. Go to here and do plot view, and then go over here, and it's ready to go. So all that said, I got a lot of extra line work in here, though in effect I presume that in SketchUp we won't have much of a problem. But really what I was interested in SketchUp was breaking these pieces up for Sketchy Physics down to this idea of regions, and instead of having one major region, having a whole set of regions. So what I'm going to do here, in anticipation that it does not like concave structures, I'm going to go ahead and start doing them like we've done before, a bunch of freezing of layers here. I don't need the view layer, and I do not need the centerline layer, and I'm pretty good there. And then I'm going to do one more set of layers here, make a new layer here. I'm going to go small regions. I'm going to hit here and say small regions. Double click on that, make that current, give that a different color. I guess I'll make that gray for now. And what I'll do here is I'm going to just go ahead and make individual regions. So I'm going to say this region, bpoly. Remember that bpoly command. Now instead of making it a polyline, I'm just going to make a region. I'm going to pick a point, and I want it to be individual regions, so I'm just going to kind of make sure that I don't do them all at once. So it didn't find a valid hatch. Pretty interesting there. Can't find a valid hatch boundary within there. Well, that's pretty interesting. So what it's done now, it's done a boundary there. It's marked out some issues here. It's always fascinating how these programs don't always work. So I could have swore it did it overall. I'm going to once again pick a point here. I've got a point there. I've got a point there. I've got that little bit. It can do this. It can do this. It can't find something out in here and in here. We may have to investigate that. So what we do have now, something about the way I drafted this, it's having a problem with. So we'll try it one more time, but I'm going to point out right now, I should have a region here and a region here, and it's kind of things overlapping. So it's another great thing to do right now is to go in and isolate your small regions layer just to see what you have. But of course, before you do that, it's always a good idea to say this, save, and then I'm going to say new, and then all region treble. So I've got to come up with better names on these layer managers, but that's such an important habit to develop. So what I'll do right now is then once again go ahead and isolate, try to grab this layer here, and I've got most of the pieces done, and I can see what I'm missing. Some here up here, it's missing those pieces, and so I'm going to try one more time. I'm going to say once again I can unisolate the region by hitting this, and I'm going to try and wonder why this thing is not working, but I'll try it one more time. bpoly region, pick points, and now it finds it. Doesn't find that one, however. So I got that one. Once again, I can isolate a region. Now this is more complex than I would have cared to have done the first time, but what are you going to do? I'm going to unisolate. Sorry. So I've got a region there. I'm going to go ahead, if we think about it, eventually I want a layer that's just small regions. So I'm going to see if I can make a layer state that's just small regions. So I'm missing one more piece, just this one in here. So we'll try it one more time and then we'll just fake it. Again, we're not supposed to fake it for machining. Now what we're trying to do is do some conceptual modeling here, so I don't want to say that too fervently. I'm showing you an issue with AutoCAD and ellipses here that some of you have already run into, and somehow I did better than most when I did this. So I'm going to go through here one last time, unisolate the region, and try a B poly region. Pick points, and we try to zoom in here and hope. And that time it looks like it made it, but I don't really know until I once again isolate the region. And I have a whole set of regions here. Alright, last thing I'm going to do for you is, in this one I'm going to tell you, it's quite often it's a nice idea to get rid of all the other stuff, and the best way to get rid of all the other stuff sometimes is not by doing a erase or anything, but it's to write out what you want. So in fact this was this transfer piece of information here, so I'm going to do something right now, show you how to make a block and a write block. Remember, block was one of our minus commands, minus B. Block name, I'm going to call it regions. Insertion point, I'm just going to use the endpoint right there, grab my objects, and it made it a block in the drawing. It did not send it out. We'll talk about what the two things are, but I can now do W block, and I can select a block. You can use a minus W block as well, regions. I want to remember to save this, right, where I know where it is. And that sounds good to me. It's in the K drive, but I want to get really good at when I'm writing blocks out to write them out as an 04, and you'll see why later. I hit save here, hit OK. So what I've done is I'm sending out that block. I don't want to send that information out, but I've sent out, and I can now finally go back before I leave my drawing, which has got a lot of extra information in it, but hopefully that extra information is on different layers, and set it back to the way I want. I can do that by going here and remembering I can change the layer state back to plot view state, and I can go ahead and make sure this is in view and everything's good to go. Thanks for listening. We'll call that the end of that, but I'm going to finally, just to fill up this time, I'm going to go back here and tell you within, I'm going to bring in that W block. I'm going to go back to now B edit and go to that block I made, which was here, and see if it does let me extrude within that block. So I'm going to try this EXTRUDE, grab an object here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and I can of course extrude a certain distance. In this case maybe it would have been a 1/4 inch. I don't know how thick, it's a little bit, 0.125. And if we look, say close the block editor, save your changes to regions, and now you'll see if I go ahead, this is actually, is a whole set of things in a certain layer that are in 3D. So a final great command you should start to learn is vports 2. Okay, I've got 2 viewports here. One is that one is this one. I double click in one, I change my current. I go here and I can kind of change what I'm looking at, which means now if I turn on all my layers, double click in there, go to my layer manager, and at least turn on turn them all on, I might see something, but I really won't, if you remember, because I didn't that block, I actually just wrote it out. So now if I do an insert my block, my regions block, okay, at a particular spot, I see that that object is in 3D. And that is why I use add a loaf minus an ARPI. Give me a break, make me a region. So you can get to this 3D either in AutoCAD, Inventor, or SketchUp, and the 3D is actually usable and workable. Thanks for listening. The next step is in SketchUp.